Why does a prize handed out in Scandinavia every October spark global headlines? And what does it mean when a Peace Prize winner is a soldier, a politician, or sometimes no one at all? Hey everyone, I'm Noah Zerbe. I'm a professor of international relations at California State Polytechnic University Humboldt. And today on Global Insights, we're examining the history, the politics, and the oddities of the Nobel Peace Prize and what it reveals to us about global power, legitimacy, and recognition. Let's start with the basics. The Nobel Prizes were established in 1895 in the will of Alfred Nobel, a Swedish industrialist, chemist, and the inventor of dynamite. In his will, Nobel directed that his vast fortune be used to create annual prizes for those who had conferred the greatest benefit to humankind. Some believe Nobel's interest in peace was sparked by guilt, after a French newspaper mistakenly published his obituary with the tagline, "The Merchant of Death is dead," criticizing him for profiteering from explosives used in wars. Today, prizes are awarded in 5 fields established by Nobel's will: physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and peace. A 6th prize in economic sciences was established in 1968 by Sweden's central bank, the Sveriges Riksbank, in memory of Alfred Nobel. It's technically not one of the original Nobel Prizes, but it's awarded alongside them. The Peace Prize, though, is unique. While the others are awarded in Stockholm, the Peace Prize is awarded in Oslo, Norway, a nod to the historical union between Sweden and Norway when the prizes were created. But here's where things get interesting. Nobel's will was incredibly vague. He said the Peace Prize should go to the person or group that has done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations, for the abolition or reduction of standing armies, and for the holding and promotion of peace congresses. That's pretty broad, and it's led to more than a few debates. So, how did we get from the vague ideals in Nobel's will to selecting a global Nobel laureate? That's where the Nobel Committee comes in. Each year, the Norwegian Nobel Committee, appointed by the Norwegian Parliament, selects the Peace Prize laureates. They rely on nominations submitted by a limited group, members of national parliaments and governments, university professors in relevant fields, past Nobel laureates, and certain non-governmental organizations or NGOs. In total, hundreds of names are submitted each year, but the nomination list and the committee deliberations remain sealed for 50 years, a secrecy that fuels both mystique and criticism surrounding the prize. Past winners include heads of state, dissidents, scientists, and entire organizations like Médecins Sans Frontières or the United Nations. What are the criteria to win the award? Officially, the committee looks for work that promotes peace, disarmament, and diplomacy, but how those ideas are interpreted varies pretty widely from year to year. Some prizes go to lifetime advocates of nonviolence, like Martin Luther King Jr. or Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Others recognize post-conflict reconciliation, like the award to Colombia's president, Juan Manuel Santos, for ending the country's 50-year civil war. But there are also surprises. Barack Obama received the Peace Prize in 2009, just 9 months into his presidency. The committee said it was awarded for his vision for nuclear disarmament and diplomacy. But even his supporters were stunned by the timing, and Obama himself said he was surprised and admitted the award was probably premature, viewing it more as a call to action than a reward for actions completed.
I am both surprised and deeply humbled by the decision of the Nobel Committee. Let me be clear, I do not view it as a recognition of my own accomplishments, but rather as an affirmation of American leadership on behalf of aspirations held by people in all nations.
And while the Nobel Committee often seeks to elevate peacemakers, its choices can also provoke sharp criticism. For example, in 1973, the prize went to Henry Kissinger and Lee Duc-tho for negotiating peace in Vietnam, even though the war raged on. Lee Duc-tho actually rejected the award, and 2 committee members resigned in protest. Then there was the 1994 prize honoring Yasser Arafat alongside Israeli Presidents Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres for their roles in negotiating the Oslo Accords between Israel and the PLO. The award sparked backlash on both sides of the conflict, and a member of the Nobel Committee resigned in protest. And in 2010, the award was given to Li Xiaobo, a human rights activist and critic of the Chinese Communist Party, imprisoned at the time of the award. The Chinese government reacted furiously, censoring media coverage, blocking foreign diplomats from the ceremony, and launching its own counter-alternative prize, the Confucius Peace Prize. These moments raise a key question. Is the Peace Prize reserved for accomplishments or an incentive for future progress? Despite criticism, the Nobel Peace Prize holds tremendous soft power. It shapes global narratives about who counts as a peacemaker. It elevates causes like climate change, education, or disarmament that might otherwise be ignored on the global stage. Think of Malala Yousafzai.
This award is not just for me. It is for those forgotten children who want education. It is for those frightened children who want peace. It is for those voiceless children who want change. I'm here to stand up for their rights, to raise their voice. It is not time to pity them. It is not time to pity them. It is time to take action. So it becomes the last time. The last time. So it becomes the last time that we see a child deprived of education.
Her 2014 win brought unprecedented attention to girls' education, or Wangari Maathai's 2004 win, which recognized her work in Kenya's Greenbelt movement, linking environmental protection and peace building.
So together we planted over 30 million trees that provide fuel, food, shelter, and income to support the children's and education and household needs. The activity also creates employment and improves soils and watersheds. Through their involvement, women gain some degree of power over their lives, especially their social and economic position and relevance in the family. This work continues.
In this way, the Nobel Committee itself acts as what political scientists call a norm entrepreneur, an actor that helps to establish and spread new international standards. But here's the catch. The prize also reflects liberal Western values of peace and progress. Critics argue that it tends to overlook perspectives from the global South or awards those aligned with existing power structures, that it tends to be politically cautious and institutionally conservative, often overlooking grassroots movements and rarely challenging the global economic system or militarism too directly. As a result, a number of alternative peace prizes have been established. In addition to the Chinese government's Confucius Peace Prize, there's also the Right Livelihood Award, which tends to focus on environmental and social justice and is often referred to as the alternative Nobel Peace Prize, the Sean McBride Peace Prize, and the Pax Christi International Peace Award, a faith-based award. So the Nobel Prize is both a tool of recognition and a mirror of global politics. It tells us whose struggles get acknowledged and whose don't. But before we wrap up, let's zoom out and look at some of the more curious or even controversial corners of the Nobel history. Because behind the prestige, there's also plenty of surprises. Gandhi never won. Despite 5 nominations, he was never actually awarded the prize. Following his assassination in 1948, the committee briefly considered a posthumous award, but ultimately gave no prize that year, a move that many seemed as a tribute to a man they missed. The prize has been awarded to an entire continent. In 2012, the European Union won the award for advancing peace, reconciliation, democracy, and human rights in Europe, especially notable given the continent's history of conflict. The United Nations and its subsidiary organizations have won the award a dozen times, most recently in 2020 when the World Food Program was recognized for its work to combat hunger and for its contributions to bettering the conditions for peace in conflict-afflicted areas and preventing the use of hunger as a weapon. And there have been years where there's been no winner at all, including during both world wars and most recently in 1948 after Gandhi's death. And then, of course, there's the IgNobel Prize, a parody award given out annually by the science humor magazine, The Annals of Improbable Research. Its motto, first make people laugh, then make them think. Some winners include researchers who study why people spill coffee when walking, why wombat poop is cube-shaped, why woodpeckers don't get headaches, or how roller coaster rides help patients pass kidney stones. But these awards aren't just a joke. They highlight how playful curiosity can lead to profound discoveries. The most famous example is André Gide, who won an Ig Nobel in the year 2000 for his use of magnets to levitate a frog. While the image is hilarious, the experiment was a brilliant demonstration of a fundamental physical force. And the punchline? 10 years later, Gide went on to win the actual Nobel Prize in Physics for his work on graphene. He's living proof that research can indeed first make you laugh and then make you think. The Ig Nobels remind us that recognition can be both profound and playful, that curiosity matters even when the question seems absurd, and in a way, they challenge the idea that prestige always equals importance. Whether solemn or silly, these prizes remind us that recognition isn't just about past accomplishments, it's also about shaping how we think about the future. So, what can we take away from all this? The Nobel Prize isn't just a medal, it's a signal. It's a global spotlight, one that reflects changing norms around peace, justice, and global responsibility. But it also raises questions. Who decides what peace looks like? Whose struggles are elevated and whose remain invisible? And as we watch this year's announcements, let's not just ask who won. Let's ask what that choice tells us about the world we live in and the values we're trying to uphold. Thanks for watching Global Insights. If you found this episode helpful, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And let me know in the comments, who do you think deserves a Nobel Peace Prize and why? I'll see you in the next episode.